Welcome to the Ask Phil Skinny podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Greg Hman. Greg, welcome to the show. Please tell us more about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Peter. Yeah, well, the story really is that I ended up having some pretty major medical issues, and that was quite horrific and really just caused a lot of problems in my life. And I didn't think that I would be able to discover the things that I've been able to uncover in regards to health. And finally, luckily, I'm now working with, multiple different doctors, even a scientist with his own lab, just because of some of the results that we've been seeing from some of these techniques. A lot of which, I'm always reading the latest scientific evidence and data that I can find. And it was really the Japanese that really impressed me with a lot of the data that I started actually applying into my life. In fact, I should probably clarify for the audience, I'm inhaling hydrogen. I'm not sick. It's just something that's good for me. And we were sitting here just chatting. So I thought I would take the time to inhale it while we're talking. But yeah, technically, I'm not even supposed to be alive right now, according to the medical establishment. And I did ironically work in the medical field for about 2 decades, maybe a little bit more. And so I really got to see what happened behind the scenes. And of course, I was quite disappointed, thinking to myself, I hope I never get sick and have to go through what I saw many people go through. And then lo and behold, I ended up getting numerous medical issues from autoimmune issues and gut issues. My liver, my kidneys really weren't doing so well. I had a really severe inflammation that caused extreme pain to the point where I couldn't walk. And I had tumors in my body. And I also above all that, I even had a heart condition. And the heart condition was probably the main thing that the doctor said that should have already ended my life. And I never expected that the techniques that I began to learn and develop would get rid of my heart condition, which it did. My cardiologist confirmed it. And then I ended up sharing my technique with some other people. In fact, one of the people, there's multiple stories, but one of them, and before I begin, I really should say, I don't give any medical advice. I make no medical claims, and I make no claims for or against any products. But there's a woman who's almost 100 years old. She's like 98 years old, and she had numerous heart conditions. And her doctor told her that there was no point in doing surgery on her because he just said she was too old. She wouldn't survive the surgery. She was on pharmaceuticals also, on top of the multiple heart conditions. And her daughter found me, and she decided to do my protocol, and all her heart conditions went away, and they had to remove the pharmaceuticals. And the doctors were so blown away. And I've been doing this for a long time. Anybody who's ever looked at my YouTube channel where I was basically given everything for free, it's a promise I made a long time ago if I were to discover and find my way. And I just didn't realize that these techniques would be like not only amazing for health and anti-aging and skin and all these different things. And so I've made a pretty big commitment to continue to share this information. So I appreciate you having me on to be able to share it.
Thank you. It's amazing because I also had a research institute that is based on the works of William Reich. And I'm trying to discover that. I also check a lot of things from Japan because they have one of the oldest populations, especially what is related to autophagy and these Nobel Prizes that they got for medicine in the past decade. They're amazing. So I'm really curious. So you said you have developed your own protocol.
Yes.
Uh, could you talk a bit more about protocol? Is it uh, is it holistic protocol? How do you see it? How do you practice it? Is there anything you can share with us so that our listeners and our viewers could have a bit better understanding? I will include link to your webpage in the description, but I would like to know a bit more about the protocol. How do you go about it? How much it costs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So as far as the protocols are concerned, there's different levels to them. And the reason that I created different levels to the protocols was because some people just have a very difficult time putting a ton of effort to try to maximize their health in their life. And I wanted to create something that was simpler and easier. And then if you want to, take it up a notch and take it up a notch. So there's different levels to it. In fact, the amount of support that I've recently received from, like I said, numerous doctors and scientists at this point, there's a website that is being created literally as we speak, because I never did websites. I never did anything like this. In fact, this was never a job for me. My life was on the line. And when I discovered what I discovered, I just put it on YouTube for free. But one of the foundation, I can tell you some of the different parts of the protocol, and it depends on the individual. This is why normally I do consultations, because it's really going to depend on the individual, the specific issues they have, the level of effort they're willing to put in, and these type of things. But foundationally for my protocols is extremely clean water. So water is extremely important, because I don't think people realize that we have a major problem with our water. Our water is highly contaminated. And people may think, oh, I have a well, or I'm getting it from this special place, or I buy filtered water. The way that they test water for roughly 50 to 100 contaminants when we have thousands of chemicals, it's not being done right. I really think there's a major, I don't want to call it a conspiracy theory, but there's a major problem. And actually, there was a leaked document from a 3-letter agency, which I guess it'll remain nameless, but in this document, they show that they have been putting things in our water. And at this point, if you look at all the things, well, here, I have a third-party lab test here. And just as an example, because there's so many things, we're talking pages and pages of chemicals, just page after page of the stuffs in the water. And I was quite surprised. I had to, in order to figure out my protocols and create this whole thing, I had to become kind of an expert in multiple fields, and it became a little difficult. But like, I know all about water filtration. I know every water filtration modality in existence. I know what they can and cannot do. And this is important. And the good news is that it's not that expensive to clean your water to the highest level. And so that's one thing that I educate on and I teach on. If people just want the answer, like if you just want the simple answer, it's what I call carbon distillation. And if people want to see, so I only recommend that which I use. I've had a lot of companies try to contact me and offer me money to promote different products, but I don't do that. So people will see that I don't promote 1 million products. Why? Because you don't need 1 million products to achieve good health, in my personal opinion, and everything that I created. But if you want to see the equipment, I do recommend American-made carbon distillers. The website is called mypurewater.com. And of course, if people want to support what I do and they want discounts on anything they decide to purchase, they can use the code uprising144K. But here, I'll give you an example just to show you something. Do you know what PFAS is, otherwise known as forever chemicals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we take an example here, here's PFAS. Here's a couple. There's more than one type. And these are all the levels of water of all the different things. But this is the level of PFAS. And after carbon distillation, 0 detected. And this is all the zeros is after carbon distillation. And so that's how good this method is for cleaning water. If you have a reverse osmosis, if you have a carbon filtration system, these are a refrigerator filter. These are not going to clean your water to the highest level. Mm-hmm. And if you understand what's in our water, you'll understand why it's affecting our health so much. One, it's the #1 source of microplastics that enter your body. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the pharmaceuticals that we've seen at high levels. I don't know if you have any idea the pharmaceuticals at the highest levels, I could just tell you, but one is antibiotics. So you know how that affects the GI system. You really don't want to consume those regularly. 2, women's contraception is also found in the water at high levels. And you can imagine how that affects men and women, of course, but you really don't want that in your body, in my opinion, because of the hormonal effects. And then 3 is actually antidepressants. And not to get too far and deep in the woods, because again, I don't give any medical advice, but people can look into long-term usage of antidepressants and how it appears like, that it potentially might have an effect on Parkinson's. So these are things to think about. And so the thing that shocked me, though, I can share some things that really shocked me throughout all my research. One, I was shocked about finding radioactive contaminants in water. I was absolutely shocked about this. I did not think in a million years that we had radioactive contaminants in the water. But look at the good news. Carbon distillation removes over 99% and over 99.8% of radioactive contaminants in the water. So that's really important. The other thing is the biological contaminants, meaning we're talking about things like parasites, viruses, bacteria, and even mold. And your average water filter is not going to get rid of these things. And so you may drink tap water one day or bottled water one day, and you think it's no big deal. But we're talking about something that you do on a daily basis. And that's what changes everything is your habits. And clean water is so essential, not to mention some of the amazing research coming out of Japan about how the body adapts based on the amount of water that's coming into it. So it begins to cause different processes in the body. And that was remarkable to me. The way that the Japanese figured this out is so unbelievable to me because it's extremely important, to say the least, to have proper water intake on a daily basis, and your body will begin to literally change, you know. And the other sad part is, who do you think, Peter, that contaminants in water affect the most?
Children, usually.
Absolutely. Babies and children. Have you seen the level of medical issues with children these days?
Mhm.
I don't think parents think about this. We're talking about a baby or a child that their brains aren't fully developed, their kidneys aren't fully developed. Their body's in the process of development. And throughout that process, it's extremely important to give the kids what they need. And it's something that's very well understood in Japan. You go to Japanese schools and they literally have nutritionists in schools because they understand that you need to feed the body, feed the mind in order for them to be able to receive the education and be able to think straight, you know. And this is a well-known thing in Japan, but in America you just don't hear enough about it. And then of course, clean water is just foundational. I'm not saying clean water is going to fix all your problems. To me, clean water is just how would I put it? Clean water is more of a preventative. You're preventing these things from coming into you. To really bring the magic, and the most powerful thing I've ever seen in regards to healing is a gas that is called hydrogen, molecular hydrogen specifically.
Mhm.
And that is my other expertise. And I know there's a lot of talk these days about hydrogen, but I have noticed, and this is sad because in the world of alternative health, there's, sadly to say, because I've uncovered it, a lot of corruption. And what we need to understand about things like medical gases, it's extremely important that they're pure. Just like our water is extremely important to be pure. So the way that we make the hydrogen and use it is extremely important in order to get those either positive effects and hopefully avoid negative potential effects. Like if I give you an example, have you ever seen these little hydrogen bottles out there?
Mhm.
I'm not a fan of these. I don't use them. I had to go as far as learning, or even things like, let's see here, like some of these are kind of popular out there, hydrogen tablets. Have you heard of these?
Mhm.
In my opinion, these are horrible. Like I would never use them, but they're very popular out there in the world of hydrogen. And it's really important to do things correctly. Just like if we grow our food, it's important that we have rich soil, that we don't spray a bunch of chemicals on our food. So how we make things or how we produce things really matter. And, I became known as the hydrogen man on the internet because I had to go, when I went to Japan, I went there, multiple times, and I'm set to go again. And I was studying from top engineers. I had to learn all about engineering when it came to hydrogen production in order to really understand it. And it was so shocking to me how much needs to be understood and learned about this subject that I know the average person just won't. That's why I just kind of sometimes just give the answers to people. I'm like, this is what I use. This is the best. That's how simple it is. So they don't have to do the kind of homework that I had to do because I had to study the science of metallurgy. The science of metals is extremely important in the world of hydrogen. You really don't want to be using things like plated metals or coated metals or stainless steel or chemicals like lye or sodium hydroxide to produce hydrogen. I'm not a fan of creating a chemical reaction to produce hydrogen, which is basically what tablets do. And I'm just not a fan of those methods. And I'm very thankful for what I ended up uncovering. There's a very interesting story in Japan of a man who basically developed a piece of equipment, which is actually the one I'm inhaling from, that's extremely special. And it really came from a deep place of love, because that's one thing that I think sometimes we're missing. I think health has a lot to do with love and caring. And I say that because if you do something out of love, like let's say you grow vegetables and you're growing food for people, if you put a lot of love into it and you don't want to have chemicals and stuff, because this food is going to go to maybe a family, children, a father, a mother, and you want these things to affect people in positive ways. You don't want to be hurting people with your actions and things that you do. And in the world of hydrogen, you're going to realize that almost every single product is coming from China. And people don't really understand what the materials they're using and how that affects the production of, for example, the hydrogen. So to kind of answer your question more simply, clean water and clean, properly made hydrogen are foundational to my protocol. My protocol doesn't work without it. We've actually, there was a doctor who I interviewed on my channel also, and he's a surgeon, extremely intelligent, and sadly, he's type 1 diabetic. And so he had tried so many things for his diabetes, whether he tried like the carnivore diet and these keto diets and different supplements. Interestingly enough, he did try the tablets and the bottles for hydrogen and whatnot, but he just wasn't seeing the results that he wanted. And he was getting some results as far as certain dietary things that he would try, but some of it wasn't sustainable. And he was really trying so many different things, and only having certain levels of success. And he found me on a show and decided to reach out. And he wanted to try my full protocol, which is much more involved. And obviously that one did require for us to sit down and go over things for quite a few hours. And once he did it, he was measuring everything. So this was really amazing, because do you know what a CGM meter is?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for the audience, it's continuous glucose monitor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a chip they put in your body. And
it's like a patch that you put on your skin, and then you have it in your app.
Yes, and he could measure, his blood glucose, which is very important for somebody whether they are or aren't diabetic. Now, he took the protocol very seriously, and not everybody I work with does. Some people just want to do the clean water and hydrogen because it's easy. But he took it very seriously. And he literally told me, excuse me, he literally said, I'm a little nervous about following this protocol. He said, because I'm doing the whole keto diet. And he said, your protocol requires a lot of carbohydrates. He said, I would be increasing my carbohydrate intake by a lot. And he was concerned about his insulin usage. He said, so I'm just going to try it, because I've heard all these amazing stories, and I've interviewed some of these stories on my channel, and the results boggle the mind of doctors every time. In 2 weeks, he had to lower his insulin usage by almost 80%. Mm-hmm. And he immediately called me back and he says, what I'm witnessing here makes no sense. He says, this goes beyond everything I was taught in medical school, is what he was telling me. He actually wants to present the data to the ADA, which is one of the reasons I'm working with another scientist now who has a connection to the ADA, the American Diabetes Association. And they want to show this because it's remarkable. What he started doing, though, is he started eliminating parts of the protocol little by little, because he thought that maybe it was just one thing that was really bringing about these benefits. But every time he eliminated something, if he eliminated the hydrogen or if he eliminated certain parts of it, everything began to become a little more dysregulated. And so when he really did everything perfectly, he said not only was his blood glucose absolute perfection, which he said he's never been able to achieve. In fact, I was so grateful to him for all the work that he put in and really measuring and doing blood work and, testing his blood glucose and whatnot regularly. I was so grateful for it. But as he told me, he said, are you kidding? He said, I'm grateful for you, because having type 1 diabetes it's very bad as far as all the health issues that can come with it and shorten life expectancy. And he really wanted to make sure that he could, live a longer and healthy life. And so he's very grateful for the discovery. and now he follows it quite regularly. And he keeps lowering his medication. He's almost, it's kind of funny what he was telling me. He said, if I keep heading in this direction, he thinks his diabetes might disappear. And, we all know, in the medical establishment, we know there's no fixing type 1 diabetes, supposedly, right? But it is deemed as an autoimmune issue. And I myself had autoimmune issues that are now gone. So it's been a really interesting journey. One of the scientist who runs the lab, that's another interesting one because and maybe I'll connect you to him, because what he wants to do is the reason that we came into contact was because this particular gentleman is really highly regarded. I believe he's done like over $100 million in grant money for research. I believe he's got over 500 peer-reviewed studies. He's pretty big time. And he had no idea who I was, but he does testing for a lot of, let's see here, like very wealthy people, multimillionaires, even some billionaires, because he does special type of blood work. It's pretty expensive. I believe it's around $2,000 for the blood work that he does, because he looks at certain markers that are different than anybody else has ever done. He doesn't just look at like, your red blood cells, your white blood cells, maybe some deficiencies. He's looking at certain markers in regards to aging, oxidative stress, all sorts of different markers that, again, your average person would look at. And there's a gentleman, his name is John. I'll probably be interviewing him on my channel in the future too. But this was a guy who wanted to follow my protocol, and he has been following it. I didn't know that he was doing the blood work with this doctor. And this doctor is willing to do some interesting things, which is why I might introduce you to him if you're interested. When he did John's blood work, getting Dr. Shi on the phone is not an easy thing to do. And apparently he called John, and John was pretty excited that this doctor, the scientist, was calling him. And he was basically saying, "Why are you calling me?" And he said, "I got your blood work and I saw the results." And he said, "They're unbelievable. They're so unbelievable that they're just kind of hard to believe." He said, "I would like to know, are you doing something? Is there something you're doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm following the Hydrogen Man protocol." And he said, "Who in the world is the Hydrogen Man?" And so he looked me up, and then he called me and reached out to me. And he wanted to prove that this wasn't a fluke. He literally thought this was a fluke. He thought this can't be real. It must be an accident. And so, and interestingly enough, he does blood work all over the world. And it's really quite fascinating because he can literally show by regions and by countries how fast people are aging. And this is interesting because a lot of it is dependent on the food, the area, the quality of the air, the water, all these different things. And so, so when he reached out to me, he said, "I'm going to set up a whole bunch of more testing on John." He said, because he just didn't believe the results. He said, "I just want to make sure this isn't a fluke," because he's considering wanting to write a book about it. He wants to work with me, and I want to help connect more, for example, podcasters, in order to show the truth about properly made hydrogen versus not properly made hydrogen, and the same thing about water. That's kind of the main part, of these protocols. And so he did all this testing. Again, we just got the results about a week and a half ago. And what I did with John was I said, "John, I'm going to step up your protocol a little bit. I hope you can kind of keep up, the pace." I mean, I live like this all the time. My protocols, I do live them and I do it myself. It's obviously what helped me transform my life. But so we stepped up John's protocol, and when we got the new results back, they came back even better. And so the Dr. Shi was pretty impressed by that. And so he definitely thinks this is not a fluke anymore. And so we are now working. We don't have it done yet, but it's coming out soon. They're trying to use AI to digitize and consolidate and have a way where everybody can have access to my protocols super, super cheap, because usually people need to, contact me, and then we do all these consults, and it's time consuming and it is more expensive. And so we're trying to do it where it's accessible to, pretty much anybody. And so that'll be coming out, I believe, in less than 3 to 4 weeks, by the way. And so I don't know if that quite answered your question, but that's kind of all the exciting things that are going on right now.
Okay, so you talked about clean water and hydrogen. is their diet? What's their
So,
what is inside the protocol?
so the diet part, I'm so cautious about talking about it these days because everybody and their mother argues about diet. And it's apparently controversial. It's almost like talking about politics and religion. And the hate that I get towards me when I talk about diet is just crazy. So I tend to not go into it too much. But what I can tell you is there is no set diet for everyone. So it's going to depend on many factors. It's going to depend on even your age, by the way, the specific issues that you're going through, even the rhythms of how you eat. One of the big things that I will say about my protocol in regards to diet is it is very foundational and fundamental to overcome all nutritional deficiencies and all mineral deficiencies. This is really, really important. And even what I call gas deficiencies, because the body needs all these. So if I give you an example, this is I find this ironic, Peter, because if you ever go to your doctor's office, how often does somebody go in there and say, hey, I have this symptom or that symptom? How often does a doctor say, you know what, we should check all nutritional deficiencies and see if you have any deficiencies? They rarely do it. I know that. I worked in the field. It's almost never done. In fact, in over 20 years, I saw it happen one time. One time, a doctor wanted to really check for nutritional deficiencies. And we don't think about it a ton, but it's such a fundamental scientific fact. And if I give you one example that you're probably well aware of, if you're deficient in, let's say, vitamin C, you get scurvy, right? Now, how do you fix scurvy? Is there a special pharmaceutical drug or something? No, you just get your vitamin C levels right. And all of a sudden, it's something that just goes away. And so theoretically, when I was trying to find a solution to my own medical issues, and I'm reading a ton of medical data, I thought to myself, well, shouldn't I overcome all my deficiencies before I start moving forward? Because what if it's just a deficiency that I'm not aware of, right? Who knows? I just thought it would be a good idea. Because to me, deficiencies are a lot like, I don't know if you're a car guy or if you understand houses, but if you have a house and you're missing some shingles on the roof, and you start getting water in your house and it starts growing mold or rotting the house or causing issues, that to me is the way the deficiencies kind of work. Your body's not going to be at its best, if you're not overcoming all nutritional deficiencies. But that's been a very difficult thing for the average person to do. If you actually look at it, almost everybody has some deficiency. It's very common. And so that was one of the things that I chose to tackle. And I was doing blood work every 3 to 6 months, checking for deficiencies. And while I was trying to create these protocols, before I ever shared them, I've been working on this for almost 2 decades. And so as I was doing that, I still remember, it's kind of a little bit of a funny story. And anybody who's worked in the medical field, you typically don't call the patient unless there's a problem, right? If everything looks good, they typically don't make the phone call. And I got a phone call from this doctor. She's a blood specialist. She's been doing it for over 30 years. And when she called me, I panicked a little bit. I was immediately like, why are you calling? What did you find? Tell me right away what is going on. And she said, just calm down, calm down. There's nothing wrong. And I thought, well, then why are you calling? She said, I've been looking at blood work for over 30 years, and not one time in my entire career have I ever seen blood that looks like yours. She said, you have no deficiencies. Your blood is kind of unbelievable. And she said, I had to call you. I want to know what in the world you're doing, because even the laboratory was a little kind of funny. They have these, they have the trays where they have all the blood samples. And apparently the people in the lab, my blood looked different than everybody else's. And they were like, they just noticed it. They didn't think much of it, but they noticed that mine looked differently. And when they tested it, they were like, who is this guy? And that's why she reached out to me. The ironic part is she kept wanting to know what I do. And of course, that would take for a specific consult, it takes hours and sometimes even days. We have to go over a lot of different things to fine tune for whatever your life is, because it's going to be different. Everybody needs to adapt. And everybody has different schedules and whatnot. And so she thought I was when she said, well, just tell me parts of it. And I said, well, you got to clean your water to the highest degree. I'm using molecular hydrogen because I believe personally, and based on what I've been seeing, the molecular hydrogen used correctly, and I got to emphasize used correctly, that it can transform the body's ability to not only have proper nutrient absorption so that you can overcome deficiencies, but the other fascinating thing about it is not just about being able to absorb nutrients more efficiently and properly, but it really just it takes all these other pieces and basically kind of enhances them. But being able to absorb nutrients is very, very important, right? And so that's why it's so foundational to the protocol. But when I started telling her about the clean water, about the hydrogen and different things that I do, she immediately was like, she goes, just go ahead and stop for a moment. She said, none of my patients are going to do that. See, she was calling me. She told me in confidence, in privacy, because a lot of these doctors that reach out to me, they never want to say things publicly. Because what I'll tell you, what she told me behind the scenes was, she just admitted to me. She said, I have a ton of sick patients. And she said, I'm not helping them. She said, I'm trying, but all I'm doing is giving Band-Aids and painkillers and, whatever medication she's trying to put them on, but she's not really resolving the issue. And she admitted that to me, right? And then she opened up, and this is interesting because it's a very similar story to the device that I'm inhaling from. Her own daughter is sick, and she was wanting to help her own daughter. And when she saw my levels and my blood, she's like, you're doing something. I know you're doing something. And then she opened up and told me that she has her own set of medical issues too. And I've helped a lot of doctors overcome their own sets of medical issues. And so, but when she realized that it took work, she's like, oh, I got to clean my water. I got to use this hydrogen stuff. I got to learn all these different things. And she immediately said, just forget it, because she told me, she said, I thought you were just taking some magic pill. I thought there was a magic pill. And of course, I'm trying to tell her, no, it's not a magic pill. You have to understand basics. Another part of the protocol, I can give you a few other bits too. It's really important to eliminate. I have discovered that over 80% of the people that I work with, most of their medical issues are self-induced. They're doing it to themselves. They just don't realize it. They don't realize it's the water they're drinking. They don't realize it's the way that they cook their food. Like for example, something that I'm very much against on my protocol is no heated oils. No stir fried, no pan fried, no deep fried, no heated oils. That's a very big part. No processed sugars. So when you look at labels, you do not do processed sugars. So there's certain things, it's almost like a re-education thing. And you'd be surprised what the body can do. Without the hydrogen, yeah, we've seen that the hydrogen is kind of the magical piece of this whole thing, and understanding again how to make it, how to use it in order to get, the ultimate results that we all want when it comes to our health.
Okay, Greg, to wrap up, where can our listeners and viewers get in touch with you and get on your protocol?
Well, the first thing I would say is for anybody who wants to support what I'm doing, which is free, go to YouTube and subscribe, go to Twitter and subscribe, go to Instagram and go to Rumble, because I have been attacked. And so if one platform gets shut down, I will show you where the new one will come up, right? So that's one thing. I share most of my stuff on YouTube. So if they want to just look at all this free information, it's all there. I'm giving all that away on YouTube. And then I would tell the audience, stay tuned, go subscribe, because I think in about 3 to 4 weeks, hopefully I'll be able to open up and divulge the ability for people to get access to the AI system, because I had to educate the computer on how, because again, the protocol is going to be different for each person. So in order for AI to be able to figure out how to do all this for people, so we've been working with an AI specialist on that, and then I'll be divulging that on my channel in the near future. And then people, if they really, really want to consult with me, which I'm a little hesitant because I'm really, really busy. I have so many, but I have a very hard time telling people no, especially when they have medical issues, because I've been through them myself and I know how much suffering affects us. So I just have a hard time saying no to people. But they can reach me at my email, which is uprising144k@gmail.com. And they can reach out, and I always tell people include their phone number. I usually do my best to call them and just have a brief chat with them and see what they've got going on and to see if it's something that I can help with. Because sadly, not everything is fixable. Some things can be improved, some things can be fixed, and then there are some things, unfortunately, with the limitations of what we've got going on right now that just can't be fixed, and sadly. But most of the things can. And I could give you a list. I don't know if you're interested, Peter. I could give you a list of just stuff that I've personally witnessed. Like people who've had that stuff that's just kind of disappeared, blood pressure issues, cholesterol issues, diabetes, specifically type 2. Type 1, we've just seen huge improvements. Seeing glaucoma, which is an interesting one, macular degeneration, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's. Those are pretty shocking. Those are big ones. We've literally had like a woman who didn't even recognize her own daughter, and she got her mind back and she started recognizing her own daughter. I put the testimonial video out on my channel. We've seen things like arthritis, a lot of GI issues, so a lot of Crohn's disease, celiac disease, IBS, autoimmune issues. These are just some of the things that we have seen. Even actually one of the more shocking ones, even cancer. I did a testimonial on a guy who had cancer, who really wanted to do the protocol. But one of the crazy ones was kidney issues, because in the medical establishment, they say that you can't get your kidneys back, you can't reverse kidney disease. Even my own brother, he contacted me one time. I was shocked when he called me and said, I'm about to get on dialysis. And I was like, what? What happened? And he was going to get on dialysis in about 3 to 4 weeks, and he immediately got on my protocol and reversed his kidney disease and was doing super, super great. Never had to do the dialysis. And when his doctor saw the results, this is the funny thing about doctors and their reactions. You get some doctors who get curious and they want to know what you're doing and what happened. His doctor was just like, oh, your kidneys are working good now. Okay, forget it. Like that was it. He didn't even ask why. They're working, so I guess you're not going to get on dialysis, And of course, the heart disease, I mentioned the heart conditions, my own heart condition included. And so those are just some few of the things that I've seen that are kind of shocking. I hate to admit this, but I think it's important. When I witness these things, I realize how brainwashed I've been to believe that these things can't be fixed. And when I witness it, I'm like, wow, I still have to almost slap myself a little bit or pinch myself and be like, wow, this really can, potentially change. If you understand how the human body truly works. And so I hope, and then I always tell the audience that they're, for those who are listening, please share this information, share your channel, share, because the only way that this information is going to get out is if you share it, because a lot of this information, it's really hard to get out there. And I've been working very hard to get it out there. And it's been actually something that's been kind of difficult. And I've had a lot of attacks and even threats. And it's really, and for somebody who's so small like me, I'm really surprised the level of hate that comes my way. When it just seems suspicious sometimes, but I just encourage people to share this information, because there's a lot of people out there suffering. And like I said, at least clean water, and at least for children. I think this is so important. And I know that people love children and their kids, and they probably don't realize what they're doing when they don't give them the cleanest water.
Greg, thank you for these amazing insights, and thank you for being my guest tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter, for having me on.